Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Please remember to like and subscribe for more videos. This video today is on fractions, the basics of fractions, so we're just starting it out. The first thing that I want to do is discuss what a fraction is, the different types of fractions we have, how to identify a fraction, and then we're going to get into simplifying fractions and equivalent fractions. So what is a fraction? Well, a fraction is a part of a whole. So before it becomes a whole number, we have all the different fractions. Now we have three different types of fractions. We have a proper fraction, we have an improper fraction, and we have a mixed fraction or a mixed number. Now, to know the difference between a proper fraction and an improper fraction will bring me to what is the numerator and what is the denominator. Well, the numerator is the top number of the fraction and the denominator is the bottom number of the fraction. So for a proper fraction, it means that the numerator is smaller than the denominator. For an improper fraction, the numerator is bigger than the denominator. For a mixed fraction, we have a whole number and part of a fraction left over. Let's get into simplifying fractions. And what does simplifying fractions mean? Simplifying fractions is taking a fraction and writing it in its simplest form. Let's see what I'm talking about. If we look at these 6 fractions, we have 2 over 8, 10 over 40, 5 over 25, etc. And we're going to simplify these fractions. So in order to simplify these fractions, we're going to look at the numerator, we're going to look at the denominator, and we're going to say what number can go into both the numerator and the denominator in order to simplify this fraction fully. So if I look at the first fraction of 2 over 8, I can say to myself, what number goes into 2 and into 8? We know that the number 2 goes into both of those numbers. So how many times does 2 go into 2? Once. How many times does 2 go into 8? 4 times. So my simplified fraction would be 1 over 4. Looking at the next one, I have 10 over 40. So I'm going to think to myself, what number can go into 10 and into 40? When simplifying fractions, it has to be the biggest number that can go into both the numerator and the denominator. Because if I look at 10 over 40, I know that 2 can go into 10 and 2 can go into 40. But that's not the biggest number that can go into both of those numbers. What is the biggest number that goes into 10? The biggest number that goes into 40? And I'll see that that is 10. So how many times does 10 go into 10? Once. How many times does 10 go into 40? 4 times. Looking at the next one, I have 5 over 25. What number goes into both 5 and into 25? I know that the number 5 goes into both of those numbers. 5 goes into 5 one time, and 5 goes into 25 5 times. If I look at 6 over 16, now 6 doesn't go into 16. 6 goes into 6, but 6 doesn't go into 16. So I'm not going to use 6 to simplify this fraction. I'm going to think of another number that goes into 6 and into 16. You've got it, a 2. 2 goes into 6. How many times does 2 go into 6? 3 times. How many times does 2 go into 16? 8 times. If I look at 6 over 12, now I can see that the biggest number that goes into both of these numbers could be the number 6. 6 goes into 6 one time, and 6 goes into 12 2 times. So 2 also goes into 6 and 12. 3 also goes into 6 and 12. But remember, we're looking for the biggest number that goes into both of those numbers. If I look at the next one of 24, I can see that 2 goes into 24, 2 goes into 32. But is that the biggest number? What about 4? 4 goes into 24. 4 also goes into 32. But is that the biggest number? No, it's not. What's the biggest number that goes into 24 and into 32? You've got it. It's 8. 8 goes into 24 3 times, and 8 goes into 32 4 times. Now, what are equivalent fractions? Equivalent fractions are fractions that have the same value, but they look a little bit different. So I'm going to show you how to work with equivalent fractions or how to determine equivalent fractions. So if I have the fractions 1 over 2, 2 over 4, 10 over 20, and 350 over 700, those are all equivalent fractions. So now, what did I do to 1 over 2 to get it to be 2 over 4? So if I multiplied 1 over 2 by 2 over 2, then that would be 1 times 2, this 1 times this 2 gives me this 2, and this 2 times that 2 gives me the 4. So that is saying that 1 over 2 is equivalent, it's the same as, has the same value but looks a little bit different, to 2 over 4. If I look at 2 over 4, I could times 2 over 4 by 5 over 5, which would give me 10 over 20, because this 2 times this 5 gives me this 10, and this 4 times the 5 gives me the 20. What about 10 over 20 to 350 over 700? If I multiplied 10 over 20 by 35 over 35, I would say that this 10 times the 35 gives me 350, and this 20 times the 35 gives me 700. Now, if you can look at what we're multiplying by 2 over 2, 5 over 5, 35 over 35. What does that tell me? What are those numbers? Well, 2 over 2 is actually 1. 5 out of 5, 1. 35 over 35, 1. Because if you divide any number by itself, you're going to get 1. So what are we doing? We're just multiplying each of these numbers, each of these fractions by 1. But not 1 as in just the number 1. We're changing the way the number 1 looks by making it a fraction. And that's what equivalent fractions are. We're just changing the way it looks, but keeping the value the same. If I look at the next one, I have 5 over 7 equal to 15 over 21. Well, what did I do to 5 over 7 to get to 15 over 21? What did I do to 5 to get to 15? I timesed it by 3. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So I times the 7 by 3 as well. So 5 times 3 gave me 15. And 7 times 3 gives me 21. What about 15 over 21 equal to 45 over 63? What do I do to 15 to get to 45? I'm going to times it by 3. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So 15 times 3 gives me 45. And 21 times 3 gives me 63. So that's the basics of fractions. Now you're able to simplify fractions and write equivalent fractions. Remember, the more you do, the better you'll be. Please like and subscribe for more content. See you soon.